Welcome to Hobby Clubhouse with a review of Gundam Hathaway, which has been received overwhelmingly positively by Gundam fans all around, and we're going to take a look at some notable elements in the film and give it a proper 3-point verdict at the end. This review will be divided into the first half, which won't have any spoilers, and that'll only feature footage or stills from the teasers and the trailers, and then the latter half will talk about specific story elements with supporting footage and stills from the Blu-ray disc that was generously borrowed to me by a friend. But there will be a clear warning when we change over. With that out of the way, let's get started. Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway's Flash was retitled to just Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway, and after numerous delays, it premiered in Japan on June 11, 2021. And right after that, Netflix announced that it would stream the movie exclusively worldwide on July 1st, 2021. The original novel follows the alternate timeline of Beltorca's children, and we now know that the movie fits the story to follow the events of Char's counterattack instead. So, one big change that will affect Hathaway's character a lot is that in the novel, he's the one who kills Quest during the battle, but in the timeline that we're following now in the movie, Chan Agi remains the one who deals the fatal blow from the badly damaged Riga Z, and Hathaway is the one who kills Chan out of anger afterwards. Otherwise, the movie more or less follows the plots and the events of the first volume of the 3 novels. But first, let's tackle a few very basic questions that some of you may have clicked in here for. Number 1. Can I watch this as a non-Gundam fan? The answer is yes, but there are some character motivations that will be a little bit vague because the movie expects you to know about Char's counterattack, which comes before this. Otherwise, it's a really pretty movie and you're gonna understand most of the characters, so that's probably enough for anyone to have a good time. And number 2, is this enjoyable for fans of all ages? The answer is, it's definitely for teen fans or older. The characters and their struggles are relevant to more mature audiences who are growing into their own and finding their own identity. The story relies a bit on the audience's understanding on sexual tensions as well between a man and a woman, and it really isn't a simple good versus evil story, so no, it may not be that suitable for younger fans. And number 3, the book was better. I know that's not a question, but I know some of you guys may have clicked in here hoping to find some validations for that point of view. The movie is really mostly the same. Some of the changes they did make are quite meaningful, and I think movie Gigi is definitely better than book Gigi, so checkmate. Okay, on to the proper review. To start us off, what can a Gundam fan look forward to enjoying from the film? Well, first of all, the character designs, particularly Hathaway, Gigi, and Kenneth, who are done by Pablo Uchida, gives us an air of class and fashion that fits a story about the division of social class along lines of power. The story mainly revolves around the 3, and the character design really carries a lot of that weight. Now, you might think it's Gigi who's the most attractive, but really my pick here is Kenneth Slag. I mean, the dude's gonna make any straight man question his sexuality, and we're gonna get back to him in the second half. Next is the music, which is by Hiroyuki Sawano, who returns from Gundam Unicorn, with support from other composers as well. The tracks here are matched meticulously to the movement and the pace of the film, going from a slow swell like on the Hausen to the more orchestral sounds that we get when we scroll along the many vistas, and just so much more in the actual film. It's really impossible to describe music with just words here, but you're gonna have to trust me that you'll really notice how nicely it's matched to the pace of any given scene. The sound too is wonderful. I mean, I can't spoil anything here, but you may have heard lots of people praising the sound effects for the mobile suit scenes, and specifically, they go beyond the signature pew pew of the Gundam beam rifles, and they give us new sounds that tell us more about how mobile suits work in the world from the perspective of a tiny human. That's also to say, if you have a good sound system, you're really gonna love the mobile suit scenes a ton. Then, this movie barely has any Gundam gibberish dialogue. You know what I'm talking about. We get that stuff in every single Universal Century Gundam animated work, where characters spout philosophical maxims that no real human would ever say, and then the other character responds with some twisted metaphor or some coded speech, and then the scene just becomes meaningless trash to a normal viewer. Yes, I know, there are people who watch those parts and they comb through every single word trying to find some grand unifying theory on the philosophy and the value system, but to everyone else, those scenes are silly intellectual posturing that gives us, the viewers, just so little value. And I'm happy to tell you that Gundam Hathaway barely has any of that. There's a short bit that happens at the airport, but it's not too bizarre nor is it too long. I mean, it still doesn't make a ton of sense though. There are bits of it here and there where the characters will drop a line or two and you're gonna go, wait, what now? And then they'll have already moved on and no one addresses any of the gibberish. But the good thing about that is you're able to ignore it quite easily. And lastly, the story isn't afraid to take its time. Really, we move through the world with Hathaway and we get to see a lot of how the world works, and all of that becomes bits of foundation for when the big events finally unfold. This is something Gundam movies have been just honestly terrible at. Char's counterattack and F91 just grabs you by the collar and they just drag you along brute force across all the story beats. I mean, they don't give a rat's tail if you're following along. You know, in F91, oh cool, school fair, Cecily's so beautiful, there's no time, MS attack, everybody dies. And oh cool, they commandeer the gun tech, there's no time, Cecily goes off to the enemy. And that's what it feels like, you're off to the next thing before you've fully understood the first scene. Gundam Hathaway cares about you and it respects you enough that you're gonna have a good idea of what's happening, with maybe a few times where they mention something in one line of dialogue and then they just kind of expect that you heard every single word of it, which you won't, and that's not how a movie works, Gundam Hathaway, but still, you did a good job. And truly lastly, this is a Japanese animation, and it must be a law or something that there has to be a shower scene for fan service in every single animation, so in Gundam Hathaway we do get one. Those of you who watched it know exactly what I'm talking about, wink wink. Keep that in mind and look forward to that one shower scene when you watch the movie. So that's my quick take on the movie for those of you who haven't watched the movie yet. I know it's kinda short, but there's really not much I can say specifically without spoiling anything. It's a great Gundam movie, and it's quite possibly the most well-rounded one we've gotten so far, and you're gonna enjoy it if you like Gundams. It may not be as enjoyable for general viewers, but it's coherent enough for anyone to watch and follow and appreciate. So go watch it. It's 95 minutes well spent, and you're gonna suddenly want to buy an HUC God plant after watching the movie for some reason. So that's the end of the spoiler-free section. This bit here is a small buffer before we move into the deeper discussion in the second part of this review. So here we go. So first let's talk about how the Houndsend flight is such excellent storytelling. The entire hijacking event is a new addition to the movie, and in the novel it's just a plain flight without any events. So the movie starts us aboard the Houndsend, which is a visual metaphor for the idea that those with power and influence are granted mobility in the world. It's a privilege and luxury which they're a little on the nose about, but it's more than okay for a Gundam film. And by traveling on the Houndsend, it's implied that you hold some political weight and influence in the world. And here we get the three main characters, Hathaway, Gigi, and Kenneth, who are all passengers. So none of them live in a modest home, and none of them sell junk for a living. They're all among the social elite, and that's an important distinction. Then in comes the handsome God plant, which drops off the fake Mafdi terrorists, and this is the sort of opposition we originally expected coming into the movie, where Pumpkin Mafdi strikes at the elites from outside their circle of power, quite literally hijacking and attacking that symbol of their mobility. Now, if all this seems way too heady and pedantic, the hijacking does have a very straightforward element to it, which is to start us off with a very cool action scene, but I'm trying to say that the movie is more skillful than just that, and they worked in other ideas in there at the same time. So we all know that the attack is defused by Hathaway, and we're shown his distaste towards the wanton killing done by his imposters. Now, I suspect most of us picked up on this, that where he has a strange moral contradiction. He seems to dislike the context around those killings on the Houndsend, even though he means for most of those captain members on there to die anyway. It seems a little sadistic that he was on that flight just to see their faces before he kills them later on, but somehow he finds it wrong that Pumpkin Mafdi shoots them. So on the one hand, maybe we can say that he has some sort of moral principle unlike his imposters, but I'd like to say he has more of a misplaced moral vanity, and he's really too caught up in putting rules on top of violent and horrific murder. When it really comes down to it, it really is just that, violence and horrific murder. And remember, all of this comes from the Houndsend flight scene alone, and the entire part is exciting to watch at the same time, and that's really good storytelling, especially for Gundam animation, which usually just dumps all of this stuff on us with nonsensical dialogue and it just pretends it's deep. For our new favorite Gundam girl, Gigi, I have both good things and bad things to say about her, so let's do the good things first because we all can't help but fall in love with her a little bit. So the simple word is, she is how Quest was meant to be as a character in Char's counterattack. I mean, really, she's just Quest, but she's just not as annoying. And yeah, I know that's really what she's meant to be in the novel that we're gonna find out later, but what I want to say is, we're meant to be mesmerized and captivated by Quest, like we are with Gigi. So Gigi is beautiful thanks to Mr. Pablo Uchida, and we can perfectly see why men literally got in line to hit on her. And there's that signature capricious nature to her that's like Quest's only character. Gigi isn't automatically closed off, and she's gonna ask questions to men and show a level of interest that's gonna tease any man like crazy. But just as quickly, she can shut them out completely for arbitrary and mysterious reasons, and she can turn on a dime, and that describes Quest if you didn't know who we're talking about. But Gigi is more skillfully shown in the movie with her time with Hathaway. She aggressively approaches him, and that puts our male monkey brain into hyperdrive. You see, we react the way that she wants Hathaway to react. Her magic works on us, whereas Quest, we see men pursuing her like Yune and Hathaway, and then Quest has eyes for Amuro and then Char on a whim, and then she just comes off as a big jerk. I mean, Gigi here, we'd love to be the one to be dragged into the hotel room to stay with her, and we'd be burned to ashes if she did that jealousy play on us by going out with Kenneth for the night. Now, the not so good parts about her, she really is a bit of a psychotic person without the story ever justifying it. Her freaking out when Hathaway sees her changing into her bikini is far out of whack, which Hathaway mentions in the movie to his credit, but the story just leaves it at that and it's never really addressed. The next time we see her is that scene with Kenneth in the hotel room and the two actions she takes, one where she responds angrily and the other where she punishes Hathaway, just doesn't connect at all. If a real girl does that to you, you run like hell for the hills. But as Gundam fans, we're really used to psychotic Gundam girls. I mean, we had Quest for God's sakes. But this reminds us exactly of that bad aftertaste where the story just demands that we accept her for being random and we just stop asking questions. You know, she is what she is and that's the final word, says the movie. And I don't like that very much. It hurts Hathaway as a character because now he's just a horn dog who gets hooked on a hot girl. And don't get me wrong, he's perfectly allowed to be that way. And that's exactly what he was in Char's counterattack. And really, we're just the same for liking Gigi. I mean, I know I am. But the story implies that there's more dimension to this, but Gigi herself fails to support any deeper reason behind Hathaway's fixation on her, other than she's kinda like Quest. And I think I'm gonna keep this next part short. Kenneth's leg seems like such an awesome bro to have as a friend, and that playful talk in the hotel room and that wink, I'm keeping this short because he's gonna turn me gay if I talk any more about him. I mean, great guy 9 out of 10, he's a bit aggressive when asking for sex, but otherwise makes me super insecure about my sexuality. There's just so much to say about the movie, and I'm trying to pick aspects that haven't been already discussed by other reviewers, and one big thing is Gamin being the weakest part of the story. Now, wait, okay? Put down your pitchforks and hear me out first. Gamin is a great pilot and he's a great bro. The story manages to introduce him and have us care about him in just a few minutes during that rather short Messer Night Strike, which again is some amazing storytelling that draws us in, but that became a double-edged sword. Remember this beautiful scene that ends Gamin's Messer that got grounded? I bet you yelled at your screen just like me because you thought you were watching Gamin die. And that's the emotional counterbalance that gives this beautiful scene such complexity. I mean, an ally of Hathaway has died for his cause, and I think you're starting to see how this all gets ruined by him surviving, right? I know, the movie just followed what was in the novel, but I'm not gonna miss my words. That whole battle concluded on an emotional high, and then it shot itself in the foot by saying, "Psych, he's okay." And this has deeper implications for the story as a whole actually, because later on it does this again when it returns Gamin unscathed to Hathaway. And I know, again, this is preordained by the novel, sure, but as a viewer of the movie, the plot in the end turned out to not truly have any deep stakes. Death was made so real and tangible for that one moment, and then the story just chickens out and gives us a conveniently happy resolution, free of any consequences, and that really is the weakest link in the story, you know. Tell me in the comments below if I'm crazy or something for thinking this. I mean, I think maybe they should have let poor Gamin die for the sake of preserving that proximity to death that the story built up so well. And before I end, is it just me or did anyone find it strange that we have two scenes where characters run right into walls? With all that said, Here's a Hobby Clubhouse 3-point verdict on Gundam Hathaway. Number 1. It's the most well-rounded Gundam movie to date. I don't think it's a contentious thing to say that this is a great Gundam movie to watch. I mean, I wouldn't recommend F91 or Char's Counterattack to anyone who doesn't already like Gundam, but I would do that for Hathaway. The story tackles issues and themes that are undoubtedly very central to Gundam, like violence of armed conflicts and its effects on people, and younger generations trying to find their identity in a troubled world left by the mistakes of the previous generations. And somehow they work giant robots into a core part of the solution, and that's what we're here for. And number 2, some bad habits remain, but it's never indulgent. See, I have beef with Tomino because the guy is the dictionary definition of indulgence. It's from him that we get the gibberish-laden pontification on philosophy that plagues so many Gundam works, and some people even defend that as a core element of Gundam, and actually I'm fine with that. People like what they like, even if it seems like Stockholm Syndrome to me. But finally, we have a movie here where we understand most of the conversations like a normal human without too much trouble, and other than Gigi, no one acts wildly or erratically. And maybe it's a bit like how if you're an abused pet, any day where you're not beaten brutally is like the best day of your life, but really, the lack of traditional bad habits common to Gundam is one of the best things about Hathaway, and you're gonna see a lot of reviews sharing this sentiment. It's great because it's not too abnormal. And number 3, it makes model kits better. Tell me in the comments if I'm on the money. So if you own the Messer, I bet you've never loved the kit so much as after you saw that night raid, right? And if you own the Penelope, you ran over to play the thing immediately even if you've never done that before. And the jerks at Bandai made the Blue Gustav Carl P Bandai, so we can't play with that, it's a stupid Bandai. But anyway, the movie adds so much information and character to each of the MS through the story, and they didn't shoehorn in a billion old kits in hopes to make us buy them. And that's some great restraint, and one that I think we should all appreciate, especially when every other supporting media for Gundam nowadays can be quite cynical and blatant in pushing model kits. The movie treats the mobile suits with care and respect, and that in turn makes the model kits more meaningful to us as fans, and I love that. So I hope you enjoyed this rather short look at Gundam Hathaway. I wanted to pick a few things I haven't gotten a detailed look at from other reviewers, and really, the movie doesn't need me to validate how great it is. But I hope this video elaborated on some things about the film that you also agree with. So thank you so much for watching. Come look us up on social media with updates on upcoming videos and sneak peeks at future projects, links are in the description below. Or hang on here some more with one of these other videos. But before you go, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to be notified of new videos from Hobby Clubhouse, and I'll see you next time.